Welcome, everyone. My name is Tammy Bennett. I'm an Oriental medicine doctor, and I am the host of your show today, A Modern Healer's Journey, here on YouTube. Please remember to like and subscribe. You can also find me on the web at tammybennettomd.com. I am very pleased today to welcome Dr. Happyness, and I'm super excited about this interview, have been for a couple weeks now. I know you've got a really good sense of humor, and we can have a really good dialogue. It's going to be very off the cuff. But briefly tell the audience how you and I met.
Well, how we met? We met, I don't know, a few weeks ago at a preview or at one of my dear friends' homes, who I believe you've interviewed, Miss Kelly Johnson. Prior to what we do there, a sweat lodge, and we had a wonderful conversation, and that's how we met. It was just sort of a random meeting. I call it a magical intersection.
Indeed. Over watermelon.
Oh, that's true. Over watermelon. That's very. Thank you for reminding me that. I haven't had any since.
Me either. So, I am fascinated by your story. When I met you and we started talking, I knew I wanted to have you come on the show and share your experiences with other people. What we do here is try to help educate people about health and wellness, awareness, empowerment, what they can do to be their own health advocate, not only as a purveyor of wellness things, but also information. So how did you end up in the hospital?
Well, how did I personally end up in the hospital? Well, it was 2 years, about 2 years and 3 months ago. I was having some abdominal discomfort and realized that there could be something seriously wrong. So I went to the emergency room here in Orlando. I got out and into the chair and into a wheelchair, and the triage nurse there said, "Well, this is COVID," and I said, "No, honey, this is cardiac." And that's the last thing I remember for 5 days. I actually was flown by helicopter from one hospital to the trauma center downtown in Orlando here, ORMC, for emergency open heart surgery. I had 5 bypasses, was in a medically induced coma for about 2.5 to 3 days. And that's how I ended up in the hospital. I have been for 30 years, though, advocating for patients, not as a patient, and I like to call them people, not as as an advocate for other people that are in the hospital. So I'm certainly glad that the cardiologist made the call to do what he did, or I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
I gotcha. And you had a rare quintuple bypass, correct?
Correct. I had 5 bypasses, very rare. They do say you can get 6, but it's a very small artery, and usually that artery, if you do have issues with it, your body does build other highways around it. But yeah, I had all 5 replaced.
Gotcha. So when you were in the medically induced coma, I have to ask this question. Did you see the light?
Well, I've been asked that for the last 2 years, and it's funny. I was in the publishing business back in the mid 80s, which is actually how I learned the signs of a cardiac issue. My father had a massive heart attack on Christmas Day, and leading up to that, the couple hours leading up to that, I learned what I should be looking for. But the answer to that question, very simply, is no. I did not see the light. Being that I was in the publishing business, though, because I published my deceased father's book after he passed, I also published a book on near-death experiences that was written and researched by a psychologist and hypnotherapist down in the Fort Lauderdale area. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because many people in that book had seen the light. But
are you familiar with the name Dannion Brinkley?
I'm familiar, yes.
Okay, yeah. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. There's a woman by the name of Sandra Champlain that does a podcast called Shades of the Afterlife. And she has him on pretty frequently to talk about his experience. So because you didn't have that see the light experience, when you woke up, what was on your mind? Obviously, you were stunned. What were your first thoughts?
Well, that's that's another interesting experience. Back in 2015, I was advocating for a person, a family member, in that very same hospital. And we were there for 191 days, ICU for 65 days. And that, I'm sort of telling you this because that's where the Dr. Happiness brand came out of. I have been studying positive psychology and speaking about it for many, many, many years, decades. And I, in the ICU unit there, put up a wall in the ICU unit where I called it a happiness wall, where people had to sign a little card and how they were sharing happiness and what they were grateful for. And quite honestly, I don't care if you were a doctor, a surgeon, a technician, or nurse. If you didn't sign my wall, you didn't work on my family member. I fired a number of them and became known by the nurses as Dr. Happiness. They started calling me that there. So
Gotcha.
that's where that really was born out of. They say that out of every adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater opportunity. So at any rate, the nurses there, being in ICU for 65 days, we became friends. I used to bring in bagels. I'd bring in gourmet pizzas. They'd bring me Jamaican food. And my first thoughts when I woke up was, oh my gosh, I have the same nurse that the person had, that family member had back in 2015 in the ICU unit. Her name was Shireen, and she was my nurse when I opened my eyes after being brought out of the medically induced coma. So my first thoughts were, okay, well, I'm in good hands.
That's such a comforting feeling because I'm certain that a lot of people wake up and go, "Holy crap! I, I don't know anybody. I'm in unfamiliar territory. They may or may not have a family member holding their hand." It saddens me deeply that during COVID people didn't have that,
Right.
initially. So that's comforting. So beyond then the comfort, did you have the next rational thought?
My next rational thought was, what am I going to do to get out of here and get, I mean, really, that's what I thought. What do I got to do to get out of here and continue my mission of helping other people excel and spreading, happiness around the world, and especially with our healthcare. And, I like to say that our unfortunately in this country, we have a sick care system, not a healthcare system. And I'm very much an advocate for what you do in your world, and an advocate for people taking care of themselves. Another sort of strange thing that happened 8 months prior to this episode was I got run over by a car in a parking lot, and yeah, it was a heck of a year. But
I'll say.
from that, I was going to some nerve doctors, and I had some discs and issues with torn meniscus. The neuromuscular doctor, when he went over this, he spent like 45 minutes going over this report on what had happened with my nervous system. That was really sort of secondary, but to the story, he looked at me and he said, "You may want to go over this with your primary." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you just did." And he was flabbergasted. I said, "What do you look?" He said, "No, no, no, your primary." I said, "I am my primary." And that's the attitude that I've taken for years, but even more so in the last two plus years, that I've taken back my power when it comes to my own healthcare. I've become my own primary, and and not saying anything negative about primaries out there, but just I believe that every one of us needs to take control of our health. We need to become our primary. We need to be proactive in that world, and not press the easy button like so many of us do and are conditioned to do, and come to people like you, to help be healed. I mean, that's what, to me, a modern healer's journey is all about. So
You're You're speaking the words that I think of on a regular basis, and I'm glad you're saying it, not just me saying it. I can't tell you how many people that I see that come through my doors. I've treated 10,000 or more people over 20 years, and I can't tell you the number of people that say to me, "Well, the doctor never called with my results, so I guess I'm okay."
Well,
And I'm thinking to myself, I ran a big office. I did the behind the scenes. I did front of the scenes. I had MDs working with me. I had ARNPs working with me. I had medical technicians, and lots of things slipped through the cracks. I'm not going to be the first person to tell you that. And if a doctor doesn't call you, you call and say, "I want my test results."
mm-hmm.
I'm
Well,
sure you see that a lot.
I've seen that quite a bit, even with the people that I've advocated for most recently. Not only myself, but the other person I told you about. They don't pick up the phone. They don't, they don't take. They're not proactive with their own health care. And and that's true. They don't call. They don't return. And the excuse is, well, they're busy, or the doctor's got to call you, or you got to come in for an appointment. I just want to encourage everybody who watches this.
Okay, we just had some technical difficulties. So, Dr. Happiness, tell us about when patients experience issues with like test results. They don't get them. Nobody calls. How do you handle that?
Well, first of all, me personally, how I handle that, I control all of my own testing. I schedule my own blood work. I schedule my own scans. Everything comes to me and through me. But in the traditional world, where you really have to become, like I said, your own advocate or your own primary, and you got to take control. Don't be afraid of picking up the phone. And I've heard people say, "Well, the doctor's busy," or I have people now that are going through issues. This one young lady going through issues with her lungs. Another one back in the beginning of this year. Having some pulmonary issues as well, and just going and having tests and waiting and waiting and waiting for the doctor to get back and with them. And aside from the delay in getting the results, that can work really, really negatively on a person's mind. You start to worry, oh my God, how come they didn't get with me? Or somebody might say, well, if it was an emergency or a problem, they get with you right away. Well, you know what? I don't want to wait around. If you have a situation, you got to
Right.
take control. You got to take your
And
power back.
yeah, I hear that a lot too. I had a client, cardiac patient, oddly enough, that waited 6 weeks for a medication change. His blood pressure was dropping to like 60/40, and they waited 6 weeks. The poor guy was just mentally taxed over that period of time, and it was beyond me to think about why he would have waited, or that the family didn't advocate to call or sit at the front desk at someone's office to get this handled. Makes
Well,
no sense.
it's funny you said that, because when I was in the hospital with all the medication they were giving me, um, I was monitoring my own blood pressure every time they took it, the automatic thing, and I'm looking at the thing, and I saw my blood pressure dropping to that level as well. And finally, when the cardiologist walked in, I said, "I'm not taking this crap anymore." I mean, look what it's doing, and oh, okay, well, we'll take you off of this, and well, and quite frankly, Tammy, if I may say, and I'm not telling your listeners, and I just want to be really, really clear here. I am not a cardiologist. I'm not an MD, but I'll tell you what I did. The day they discharged me out of the hospital, I threw out the 9 bottles of medication that they gave me, and I did everything in your arena, actually. Everything from acupuncture to I work with somebody that you worked with before. I've done all kinds of IVs, all kinds of things. And again, I'm not telling any of your listeners or viewers to do that, but I am telling you that I took back control. And one year to the day or to the couple days after my surgery, the cardiologist who knew what I was doing and was very, very positive, great guy. He looked at me and he said, I don't, need to see you anymore. I mean, I'm going to put you on the books for a year from now. So the powers that be see that I'm booking repeat business. He said, but, your blood work, your immune system, he said to me, your EKG is perfect. And that was over a year ago. That was a year and 3 months ago. That was in July of 2021.
You said something interesting just a second ago. You said, I'm booking you a year from now, so the powers that be, I want to take that for a second. The powers that be, the business of medicine seems really, those two things together seem very wrong.
Well,
business and medicine. I struggle with that as a practitioner too. If I could change things and I could do this for free, I could do acupuncture and Chinese medicine for free and still be able to subsist. That's more interesting to me than it is to have a transactional situation as a practitioner.
Well, here's what I believe. I believe everybody that goes in, like yourself, but also doctors that get their degrees and go into the healthcare system or sick care system, as it turns out to be, I believe they're truly mission oriented when they first start. They really want to help people. They really want to take care of people. They want to see people get well. But because of what you just said, the business of medicine ruins them over a period of time. I have several nurses and people that I know that have left that arena, that I don't want to say left the profession, but have left it and gone into functional, integrative, holistic medicine. Even with their degrees, the facilities that I go to, are exactly that, and they're great people, but they had to get out of that system because it's a business.
So you're getting healthy, you're wowing the doctors, you're a patient advocate. You were a patient advocate prior to this as well.
I started 30 years ago with my mother.
Okay.
When she had a debilitating stroke and was completely aphasic, couldn't move, couldn't speak, had an NG tube. And I realized back then, and this was in 1990, actually 32 years ago, that we had a system, a healthcare system that was really controlled by money and the insurance companies and all of that. It was just controlled. And I started to advocate for her, because unfortunately, people, as they get older, they go into different, they see different ads, they go into different situations. They have a vision of a doctor, a white lab coat that, many people think that they're God. And I only wear this Dr. Happyness lab coat because this is how I speak to people when I do my seminars, and I speak to kids at the beginning of the school year about, happiness, and that's a whole nother subject here. But I started with my mom, and I realized then that if I didn't advocate for her, they would have stuck her in some, horrible facility. And I brought her home and hired my own. The insurance companies wouldn't pay for it.
Right.
Hired my own LPNs, hired my own speech therapist, physical therapist. Unfortunately, none of that stuff that in her condition really worked for her. And then from that point on, I've been advocating for people that, I know, and I've even had nurses as recently in the last 5 to 7 years tell me, we want to come work for you because we don't want to be in the system anymore. We want to be a real advocate for patients because we can't under these conditions where we work.
So I listened to another podcast with a gentleman by the name of Russell Brand. You may know him. He was a comedian. Now he's a comedian guru / podcaster / whatever, multi-branded individual. And he always talks about, how can we affect change at an individual level? So from your perspective, big pharma, big medicine, big insurance, all the money that's put towards lobbyists and things like that in Washington. How do we, as the little guy, make some changes in your estimation?
Well,
And just so you
as
know, Russell Brand has some good ideas. I think you and I should go on his show.
okay, well, I'd love to. I'd love to do a tag team it with you. Uh, but how do we make a difference? I think the old saying by by Gandhi. If you want to see a change in the world, be the change.
Be the
First, you
change.
got to start with you. Michael Jackson had a great song, "Man in the Mirror." The change starts with you at your individual level by educating yourself, by taking back your control at your of yourself, and then showing other people, setting an example for other people. Um, because let's face it, we are not going to fight. None of us, as a little guy, have the money or the resources to fight big pharma, for example. We don't have that money. We can't do that. But we can do it in our own communities, in our own self, in our own homes. And it's funny because I recently, over the last 6, 8 months, met a gentleman who is I'll leave he's a drug rep for a very, very common drug that you see advertised. And I'll leave the name of the drug and the pharmaceutical company out of it right now.
Okay.
But he, in talking with him and me telling him my story, he said, he's been a drug rep for 33 years. He said, if there were more people like you, I wouldn't have a job. Meaning, he understands that our bodies are meant to heal themselves. I mean, what you do in the world of acupuncture and Eastern medicine, that's all supporting the healing of our bodies and what we eat and what we ingest and what we supplement with. It's all out there for us, but we have to start. And people say, well, it's expensive to eat organic or it's expensive to supplement. I hate to tell you this, it's a lot more expensive to get sick, you
Yeah,
know?
my mom was in the ER just recently for a very minor car accident. $72,000 later, 4 hours in the ER, one test.
Well, that's another one of
The pet peeve.
my pet peeves. That's a thorn in my side. And give you an example. Okay. First of all, I just want to say that, everything is a mindset, Tammy. And if you have the mindset of taking your power back and taking control back of your health, that has come from me 30 plus years of personal development, of reading, of studying every morning. Even before we did this today, I'll spend a couple hours reading material, on my health, on my wealth, on my wisdom. And I programmed myself and my mindset to really be in control, if you will, of my own mind. That doesn't mean I don't go down a rabbit hole here and there. That doesn't mean I don't have negative thoughts. But I realize that those thoughts are not loving to myself, and you got to love yourself before you can love anybody else. But my point being with what my pet peeve is that I sort of where were we going? You made a comment there. I got my mind is just
Well, I was talking about the fact that in in our in our world, in the world of big pharma, big hospitals, big insurance, we're
cost.
yeah. So
Cost.
my mom goes to this hospital visit, $72,000 later. You know, if it's too expensive to eat organic, it's too expensive to get your supplements right, it's too expensive to take care of yourself, it's too timely to exercise. When you find yourself at the other end of the stick, like my mom did, $72,000 for a 4 hour ER, I can't even possibly imagine what your bills look like.
Yeah, well, 600 to be over 600, but that's
That's a discount.
well, and that's because you're right, because I am a discounted person or a patient in their world. But
Right.
let me point something out to you about cost. Not only my costs in the traditional world, but 30 days after they discharged me, they told me I had congestive heart failure. I went my first follow-up visit with the cardiologist. And prior to that, I had to go to the CHF clinic, congestive heart failure clinic, and I spoke to a PA, and she's looking at me saying, you're going to be on this medication for the rest of your life. And I looked at her and said, honey, I threw out the medication 30 days ago when I walked out of the hospital. And she freaked out. She said, but you have congestive heart failure. And I said, no, I don't. She says, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. You're going to be coming here for the rest of your life. I said, no, I'm not. And she's like freaking out because I have control. It's here.
Right.
Right. And so she said to me, well, your EF, which, by the way, stands for ejection fraction, is the percentage of blood that pumps out of your left ventricle when it pumps. And she said, your EF is 35%. I said, well, what was it, before I came in? She said, you were 15% pre-op and post-op. I went, well, that's great. I'm making progress. She said, well, it's still congestive heart failure. And I said, well, what's normal? She said 50% or higher. And I looked at her and I said, I'll have it to 50% or higher by my birthday in November. This was August 14th. My birthday is November 16th, in case anybody wants to come and party with me. But anyway, and she looked at me. She basically said, that's impossible. So the reason why I tell you that background story is on October 1st, which was about 6 weeks later, they sent me for an echocardiogram to test that. And they do the test, and I get the bill. The bill was $3,750 for a 20-minute test. Now, just to let everybody know, because my mindset, and I kept visualizing 50% for 6 weeks prior to that test, the results of that test, whereas my ejection fraction was 54%. And so I did it 6 weeks earlier. But that was the bill. Fast forward 90 days. They wanted me to do another one. I get a card in the mail from a company that's 25 years old, founded by a professor over in the Tampa area that does scans, including echocardiograms. And they said, we're coming to the Orlando area, and this is what you can get, blah, blah, blah. And I see on there echocardiogram. Now, this is a 25-year-old company, so it's not like they just fell out of the coconut tree yesterday.
Right.
Guess how much the cost was for an echocardiogram that they charged me $3,750 on October 1st of 2024. And in December, when I went, actually beginning of January, when I went to this company, the charge was $95.
Doesn't surprise me.
Okay, so I don't know. For whoever's listening here, you think about it. Okay, $95 versus $3,750, $72,000 for a 4-hour ER visit, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. And I'm going to say this, and maybe maybe you may want to edit this out, but we're getting scammed. I mean, it's not, it's not right. It's horrible for what is going on here in the name of money. And we all know it's all about money and this and that, but that's what I'm saying. It's more costly to get sick than to take care of yourself now by eating properly. It really, really is. And that's my point. And your mindset is the key too. And don't let them, it's interesting during my advocate times with other people, you walk in and a doctor, an ER doctor will say to you, well, did you make the arrangements? I've had patients look at me, or people look at me during that time and say, am I going to die this year? The doctor is saying I need to make, or is telling you to make the arrangements. Well, 5 years later, with the right mindset, the right situations that, I've worked with this one particular person, going back to the 2015 story, 5 years later, they're still alive. And it's up to you. That's all I'm saying. It's up to each and every one of us to be proactive with our healthcare. That's what I've done. I know the people that you see, Tammy, in your practice, they're attempting to do the same thing. And so, anyway, I could go on and on about that stuff.
Well, so for the sake of time, got about 2.5 minutes to wrap. I want you to tell me about the Dr. Happyness brand, about the mindset situation. Do you have books or website or other speaking engagements that you do for helping people get their mindset straight?
Well, absolutely. I do one-on-one mentoring and coaching. I'm also known as Mentor Allen. That's been a 35-year brand that I've had. So I do
I
bring.
like the Dr. Happiness better myself.
I'm sure you do, and I do as well. And it comes out of a great situation. Out of unfortunately, it was an adverse situation, but I like the Dr. Happiness. And by the way, it's Dr. Happiness with a Y, Happyness. There is a website, drhappiness.com, that currently, right now, is under construction. We took it down. We're redoing it, make it a little bit more simple and easy to navigate. I do have an email address. I mean, I prefer people to reach out to me through email or by phone. I'll be more than happy to provide that here to your viewers.
Yep.
And I do everything. Like I said, I do speaking engagements. I have one coming up. Unfortunately, it's fully sold out. Coming up here on November 12th, we had room for 300 people. We've sold out to 420. Had to expand the room.
Oh,
But
great.
yeah, but I do one-on-one, and so if you don't mind, I'll just give out the email address right now. You know it. It's Dr. Real Happy. That's DrRealHappy at gmail.com. Dr. Real Happy at gmail.com, or my direct private line, and I can prefer texts or calls or whatever, is 407-739-6984, 407-739-6984. And I'd love to hear from your viewers. And really, in wrapping up, people ask me what I do, and I'll just tell you this. I bring hope to people, and hope stands for helping other people excel and evolve, take their power back, and spread happiness around the world, because it's proven. And I can do that through studies at Harvard and Beijing University and Oxford, that the happier you are, the healthier you are. The
I
happier you are, the better relationships you have. The happier you are, the more money you make. And so that's what my mission is. And so with that, Tammy, I want to thank you. This has been a blessing to get to meet you and to be here. And I'm excited to continue our relationship and see how we can help each other excel and evolve.
Absolutely. I appreciate you as well. And I know we'll have you on for more conversation. Maybe we'll hit some interesting topics that come up in the future. Maybe talk about some things that we can do mentally and spiritually to help ourselves and gain wellness in all aspects.
That would be wonderful.